I'm Walt Ward, Air Force veteran. After getting out of the Air Force, I looked around for a job, and the VA was hiring. That was 1972. I went to work in Winston-Salem at the regional office and worked there until 2010, when after I retired, I came here, and retirement wasn't working too well for me, and found out that the county needed a veteran service officer, so I felt like I had some skills that might be useful there, and there I am. And my wife keeps telling me it's time to retire again, and I say, well, not yet. I like this work. So the County Veteran Service Office assists veterans and claimants with all kinds of disability benefits issues. That's our major function. We try to, most other type things you're talking about, just about, we're going to refer you to somebody else. But claims are our specialty. As veteran service officers, we have training, and after we're properly certified, the claims department of VA allows us to have access to your VA claims file with your permission, so that we can sit at my desk and I can be looking at and telling you that you went to school in 1967 when you got out of service, because that's there in your VA claims file. That we have that access to all your records from the time you were in service, all your service medical records that you've been trying to get for years and never quite came through. If they're in your VA claims file, we can see them, we can talk about them, we can help you with those claims. Now, that's not what I'm talking about today. I've been asked to talk about survivor benefits, but if you have those kind of questions about your veterans benefits, I'm here, we'll be talking about that, but I'm going to go through the survivor benefits part of this presentation I prepared for this morning. Survivor benefits, three broad areas: burial and memorial benefits. I'm going to talk briefly about that. We'll hear some more about that from the VA, from the state veterans cemetery people. Service-connected death benefits and non-service-connected death benefits. In your package that you were handed out today is a nice summary provided by VA, summary of VA dependents and survivors benefits. It covers in more detail things that I'm going to be talking about. It's the kind of thing, but pull that out. That's the area that I'm talking about today. Okay. Burial benefits. Briefly, burial benefits for private cemetery include a government headstone or marker, a burial flag, presidential memorial certificate at no cost to the family. Some veterans may also be eligible for burial allowance, but there are no benefits available to spouses and dependents buried in a private cemetery. So what basic requirements for eligibility for burial allowance? You have to have an honorable discharge or other than dishonorable discharge. And if the veteran dies because of a service-connected disability or is in receipt of VA compensation or pension, in other words, getting a check from VA, or died while hospitalized by VA. All those veterans are eligible for, potentially eligible for burial benefits. If the death is service-connected, the basic burial allowance is $2,000. If the death is not service-connected, there's a $300 burial funeral expense allowance, plus up to $780 plot interment allowance. And if the veteran dies at VA, then the $780 for plot, $780 for burial allowance, and so another $780 available for plot allowance. Now, if you die in receipt of VA benefits, or the VA claims people know that you have a spouse, then these payments of burial benefits, the $2,000, the basic $2,000 or $300 are sometimes paid automatically to your spouse. And sometimes aren't. It's a good idea to have, for your spouse to know that they need to check with the veteran service officer or with the folks at VA to be sure that their benefits are protected. And the burial benefits are payable. If they're not paid automatically to the spouse, then they're paid to one of the spouse or dependent child. The first person, the first one of those groups, among those groups who files the claim is usually the payee. What we, as in the Veteran Service Office, when someone calls us and say, hey, my father, brother, wife, husband, wife just died and is a veteran and may be eligible for veterans benefits, we ask, one of the questions we ask is who paid for the funeral. Have you got a paid funeral bill? Bring that with you when you come to file the claim. We're going to assist you, and then we also, that was a way of kind of assuring that the person who actually paid the expense gets the benefit. Okay, I'm not going to take any questions right now about burial benefits because we want to save those questions till after we hear about the VA cemetery, and maybe then we can answer all those kind of questions. So next subject I'm talking about is service-connected death benefits. We call it shorthand DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation. This is for service members who died while in active duty. In other words, died while in service and active duty either, and also that includes guardsmen or reservists who have been called up to active duty and died in service. There are benefits available automatically for their dependents. Service-connected death benefits have nothing to do with income. It's a benefit that's available for dependents. Same benefit is available to veterans who died as a result of a service-connected injury or disease. Or same benefits are available for veterans who did not die, for dependents of veterans who did not die because of a service-connected injury or disease, but were totally disabled because of a service-connected disability. If you've been disabled for PTSD, 100% disabled for 10 years, you die of a sudden heart attack, your spouse, surviving children can be eligible for service-connected death benefits, but simply because of the fact that you were totally disabled for 10 years. Or if it's within 5 years, if you got out of service and were immediately 100% disabled and die within 5 years. So who is a surviving spouse? It sounds like a simple question, but I've printed out the manual just in case anybody had any complicated questions. 30 pages of regulations about defining who is the surviving spouse. Sometimes it gets complicated. Okay, if a spouse is married to a veteran, to a service member who dies on active duty, then for sure that's a surviving spouse. Someone who's been married to a veteran for 1 year prior to his or her death veterans, prior to the veteran's death, are potentially eligible for the death benefit. 1 year marriage is important. Or some cases, had a child with a veteran and was married to the veteran at the time of the death. In other words, it might not have been married for a year, but there's a child been born. And then if a veteran a spouse who is eligible for benefits becomes remarried, in other words, gets married again, that benefit ceases unless the spouse is age 57 or greater. At that point, they can remarry and still receive that benefit. So, you veterans, tell your wives who are going to die of a service-connected disability, tell your wives that wait until you're 57 before you get married again, because you want to keep this benefit. Joking, of course, but then the final wrinkle on that is if your spouse gets remarried and loses the benefit, but then that marriage doesn't work out, and that terminates, then they can come back and reestablish eligibility based on the veteran service.
What's DIC?
DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation. DIC is service-connected death benefits. It's not an income-based program. It's because you as a veteran have a disability that started in service that caused or contributed to your death. Now, if there is no surviving spouse, but there are dependent children, in other words, children under the age of 18 or between 18 and 23 and attending school full-time, sometimes that's the case, then there's a separate program to provide eligibility for benefits for those children on their own. If they're children at age and there is a surviving spouse, they're included on this in the spouse's award of benefits. Okay, what I'm going to tell you now is very important for you service-connected veterans. As I told you, I worked at the regional office for years, and one of the things we had to do over the years as non-medical people, just claims decision makers, is we had to determine, based on the medical evidence we found in the record, whether a veteran's death was caused by service or related to service, even though that was not the primary reason for that. Those decisions are difficult to make. It involves often trying to get a lot of medical information that's not readily available, and it's a hard case to make in most cases, in a lot of cases. However, the current program, which has been in effect for 5 or 6 years now, says that if you have a service-connected disability that caused or contributed to your death, and that is either a principal or a contributory cause of death shown on the death certificate. In other words, when you die, a doctor fills out a death certificate. If you die at the VA hospital, the doctor who fills out the death certificate has a list of your service-connected disabilities and hopefully is looking to see which one of these might have been a contributory cause of your death. If you die, if your death is recorded, takes place at home or at another facility, the doctors are not aware of that unless you make them aware of it, and you can't make them aware of this. That's why this is important. Now, I'm going to show you a picture I made of a death certificate that was done a few years ago. It may be hard to see this. This veteran was a Korean War veteran. He died of biventricular heart failure due to coronary artery disease. He had atrial fibrillation, shown as a contributory cause of death. He had renal failure, shown as a contributory cause of death. He had dementia, and he had a history of PTSD related to military service. He late in life, his wife was bugging him about all those nightmares he had, and he finally got around to seeing a service officer and got his PTSD service-connected. That was shown as a contributory cause of death on his death certificate. The VA, without any further decision, this is considered a death certificate as a medical opinion. The medical opinion is that PTSD, which I think he was rated 30%, was a contributory cause of his death. In other words, the PTSD in some ways affected him that led to his death being earlier than it might otherwise have been. That's on his death certificate. His widow is getting DIC benefits from that point on. This is the kind of thing that it's important that we veterans who are service-connected, you veterans who are service-connected, be sure your spouse, your children, whoever's going to be involved at making decisions at the time you die is aware of what your service-connected disabilities are and how they might have been affecting your ability to care for yourself, take care of take your medications on time, exercise properly. Any service-connected disability that has any effect on your making your life shorter should be shown as a contributory cause of death on your death certificate. And sometimes it's important, often it's important that your spouse or that son or daughter who's going to help, you expect to be doing most of the heavy leg work when you pass away, is aware of what your service-connected disabilities are and how they affect your daily life, because this veteran's PTSD showing up on his death certificate made the difference between his wife getting $1,300 a month or getting nothing from VA. And that's, I want to emphasize that because as veterans, it's important. See, the other piece of this is, if you've got a service-connected disability and you say, well, I'm not going to file a claim for that because other people deserve the money more than I do, or I'm doing fine, I don't need that. But you were a Vietnam veteran, you got a disability, or you were treated for a mental health disability in service and you didn't want to talk about it, but it's bothering you more now. If you don't do anything about that while you're alive, it's very hard for your dependents to make that case after you pass away. You need to, your disabilities that started in service need to be service-connected. And they need to be service-connected not only because you deserve that recognition for the fact that you served and got injured or got caught a disease, came down with a disability, but also because it can have an effect on benefits for your dependents when you pass away. I hope everybody hears that. We talked to a lot of veterans who come to our office because their wife drug them in there and said, you've got to deal with this. There's this hearing loss that you had. Now, hearing loss, it may be hard to make the case that hearing loss fits here, but those nightmares, that hypertension that you never bothered to file a claim for, but we know it starts in service. It's important, not just for you, but for your spouse, after you pass away, that disability be fully recognized as service-connected by the Department of Veterans Affairs, because, as I said before, it's hard to make that case after you die. And it's also important. It's also important that you not only get that done, you be sure that anybody that's going to be talking to, that's going to be dealing with your providers when you die. I talked to a widow this week her husband has just passed away, and she said, I'm filling out some paperwork now. The hospice people are going to prepare the death certificate after I fill out this paperwork. And I knew her husband was service-connected for PTSD. That's not. She said, I said, what's the cause of that? She said, it'll probably be pneumonia. He had dementia. He had some severe physical problems, but he'd been struggling with PTSD and had self-medicated with alcohol over the years. And when I said to her, you need to be sure that information is available to the people who are making a decision about what appears on his death certificate, because that makes the difference between benefits for you and no benefits for you. Okay, so there are some other service-connected death benefits. Again, these are for disabilities, for veterans who have a disability that's started in service. VA is an insurance program for dependents. If you're 100% disabled, your spouse is eligible for that. If you die of a service-connected disability, your spouse becomes eligible for that. Even if they have Medicare eligibility, this is another program, very good health insurance that will do a good job toward filling in those gaps in Medicare. That's only for veterans who die of a service-connected disability. For veterans who die of a service-connected disability, there are dependents educational assistance, which if they have children college age, very generous program for college-age children. It's also available to spouses. If you die and your spouse needs to go back to school to get some skills, it's available there. There's home loan eligibility similar to what veterans are eligible for. It's also available for surviving spouses if the death is service-connected. And then the state of North Carolina, a little stingy, but they do have some benefits available for veterans, totally disabled veterans, and surviving spouses of veterans who die due to a service-connected disability. And the major one that we think is we see most often is the tax exemption for the home. $45,000 of the value of the home is not taxed for property tax purposes. For surviving spouses, if the veteran died of a service-connected disability. Okay. Non-service-connected death benefits, survivor's pension. Okay. So beginning after the Revolutionary War, the Congress often authorized war bonuses for veterans who served. Sometimes willingly, sometimes because the veterans were up in Washington getting ready to burn the place down if the government didn't do the right thing by them. This program kind of grew out of that, and that's why it is based on wartime service. Veterans are eligible survivors of veterans can be eligible for this pension program if the veteran had wartime service. Now, that doesn't mean you have to fight. Hey, the veteran has to be fighting in the battles. It means that he or she has to have other than a dishonorable discharge, and currently 24 months of service or the period for which they were activated. A lot of our veterans who are reserves and National Guard people may have been activated for 6 months and sent to Vietnam or Iraq. If they serve that period, then that's the equivalent of the 24-month service for other veterans. If the service was before 1980, only 90 days was required, at least one day during a period of war. The wartime periods are listed there. The main thing we see here is veterans who served after 1955, January 31st, 1955, before August 5th, 1964, are peacetime veterans. And this program, there's just no eligibility for this program for any peacetime veterans. And so the eligibility includes, in addition to that, any length of service, if at the time of the death the veteran was receiving or entitled to receive VA disability compensation or retirement pay for a service-connected disability. In other words, a veteran who might have gone into service and been injured a week later got disabled because of service, if he or she is eligible for a VA disability benefit for that, or is retired from the military from that establishes eligibility for this benefit. Or the veteran was discharged from active service duty due to a service-connected disability. Okay. And then we get to the sticking point on many of these claims is the income and assets are considered for this non-service-connected pension. In other words, it's not for everybody. Remember, it grew out of the war bonus program. It was designed to help veterans who were, to be sure that veterans or surviving veterans or survivors did not starve to death. It's not a generous program. It was there long before it's there before Social Security came into being. It's not been increased tremendously over the years because more and more people are eligible for benefits from the government through Social Security, and VA benefits are not there except for the people with the lower incomes. The program has had some significant changes just last fall. As some of you know, if you're applying for like people in nursing homes who are going to need Medicaid to pay for their nursing home care because they don't have any income, Medicaid looks back to see, did you transfer funds to dependents to try to become eligible for Medicaid? They have a look-back program. Well, VA has established the same sort of look-back program effective last October. So that now, if we help you file a claim for pension, there are several questions to be asked about, have you transferred any assets in the last 3 years? If you transferred assets and the transfer occurred after October 18th, 2018, then that may mean no eligibility, or it may mean a waiting period while those resources are used up for your care before benefits are available. Okay, so how much is survivor pension for? This is pension for surviving spouses. The annual income is over $9,087. That's the current dollar amount. There's a cost of living increase every year. Or monthly income is greater than $757, then there's no eligibility for this program. However, if the surviving spouse needs aid and attendance, then that amount increases to $1,509, or monthly $1,209 a month. And annual medical expenses over $594, which is 5% of that 9,000 figure, can be excluded from the income. So here's an example of a pension claim. So the surviving spouse receives $600 a month from Social Security. So that's a total annual income of $7,200. The spouse has out-of-pocket medical expenses of $2,594 for that year. So since I'll make these figures up, that leaves an accountable medical expense of exactly $2,000, because we have to take $594 away from the total. And that leaves accountable income for VA pension purposes of $5,200. In other words, we take off $2,000 from the $7,200 Social Security, and the VA accountable income is $5,200. And in that case, the monthly pension payment would be $323, because that $5,200 is subtracted from $9,087, the total benefit, highest benefit payable, leaving $387 divided by 12, $323. In other words, any income received from any other source must be reported to VA, and there's a dollar-for-dollar reduction in the pension for that income. So as you can see, with someone who has even a moderate Social Security benefit is probably going to be excluded from this payment unless there are huge medical expenses. And that takes us to the case where there become huge medical expenses. So the spouse goes to a nursing home, paying $4,000 a month for nursing care. The spouse's only income is $600 a month from Social Security. So there becomes a medical expense of $48,000 a year. Still got to take away $592 from that. Still got $47,000 plus of medical expenses. VA accountable income. You take 47,000 away from 12,000. You're way below zero. The income is zero. There's no countable income. So the surviving spouse becomes entitled to the maximum amount payable for under aid and attendance, which is $1,209 a month. So in some cases, that $1,209 a month combined with other resources the family has is just the amount that makes a difference in that providing that decent nursing home care for the spouse. In other cases, like the one we have here, that person is going to quickly use up all the resources they have and become eligible for Medicaid. Once they become eligible for Medicaid, the VA pension is reduced to $90 a month, which cannot be paid to any nursing home. That's spending money for the surviving spouse. Pays for the phone, if they have a cell phone or something like that. But it's not. There's no eligibility to both Medicaid and VA benefits the government, VA, both government programs, the Medicaid pays first and VA reduces the payment to $90. Quick run through of these programs, and there are ways to file a claim. You can actually go online and file a claim for dependent benefits online. There have been a few people over the years who've been successful in doing that. It's a complicated process, as anybody who's ever tried to use the VA claims, electronic claim system knows. So that's why the state of North Carolina funds and the county, and Montgomery County funds our office, and every county has a veteran service office whose job is to help you with these claims and help veterans and help dependents. And we're here in Montgomery County. We're a little bigger office than most counties because we have the hospital here and we have lots of business. We see a lot of people. We get a lot of referrals from the hospital because they have our phone number and know send people to see us. So we don't. If you come see us, we may ask you what county you're from, and we may say, well, you know, there's a guy over there who does the same work. You can talk to him if you want to, but we're glad to help you as well. The state has a separate program, a VSO office down in Canton that does the same kind of work we do. Various service organizations, Vietnam Veterans of America, American Legion, DAV, VFW, all have service organizations. You or your dependent has to choose an organization to assist you. In other words, if you sign a form giving me my work with the North Carolina Division of Veterans Affairs and the American Legion, if you sign a form giving you as a veteran sign a form giving me power of attorney with that for your veterans claims, then I can see your VA claims benefit, your VA claims file, and I can assist you better with that claim. Same thing is true for your surviving spouse. If he or she comes to see us, we have to get that form signed because VA only allows one organization or lawyer or agency to assist you, and they have to be agencies or organizations that are certified by VA to assist with veterans claims, dependents claims, and then we can do the best job for you. We can help you file those claims. We can follow the progress of the claim. If the claim is not decided, if we feel like the claim is not, they didn't make a good decision, we can help you with appeal. All that can be done, and none of us charge you a fee for that. There are organizations out there who are advertising themselves as seems to be more of this recently, assisting veterans with claims, and they want to start out with talking about what part of your benefit they get for assisting with that claim. Now, in some cases that might be helpful, but it's generally a good idea to talk to the county veteran service officer first because we can't charge you a fee. One last slide. Inside the packet you got today is this DMVA resource guide. It may not have the same picture on it, but it's a fine publication put out by the state on a regular basis. And near the front of that is the listing of all the county veteran service offices and our address and phone number. We're there to help. And I'm ready for questions. Get the mic and ask me a question.
My name's John. I'm a Vietnam vet. My question is, can you elaborate on cremation versus conventional burial?
Well, my short answer is not very well. The next speaker is from the state Cemetery, let's hear his presentation and see if he answers your questions, and if not, then I'll do the best I can on that question, okay?
Where is your office?
Whereas my office is downtown Asheville, 40 Cox Avenue.
Cox Avenue.
Cox Avenue, yes, sir. It's in the County Health and Human Services building, brand new building, parking garage, free parking. It's hard to get there, but once you get there, you can park and find us.
Is your phone number still the same?
Yes, sir. Our phone number hasn't changed since I've been here.
Another fellow had this question here. Are any of the benefits taxable?
No, sir. No VA disability benefits are taxable. Yes, and every year at tax time, we get lots of calls, and we have to say, no, you don't report that. That's not taxable benefit. Yes, ma'am.
Where is there a skilled nursing facility in our area that costs $4,000 a month?
That was just an example. It could be, the number, I used a number that was large enough to totally wipe out the income, and
Okay.
so it doesn't matter. I mean, I was just trying to use
Okay,
that. I could have put $6,000, $10,000.
All right, reality is 8,000 to
Yeah.
9,000 is average.
I understand that.
Hi, Walt. Thank you so much for the services that you all provide for our veterans. I have a question. At one point in time, I had a robust conversation with Stoney Blevins about having a female veteran service officer, because many times when I send my women veterans there, then they have challenges broaching certain subjects about what they need assistance with. Not saying that they discount or discredit what you all are doing, but I want to know if you all have made progress on having women veteran service officers at your location.
There are four of us in the office, two females. One, our office manager is a female non-veteran. We have a VSO who's a Navy veteran, who's worked for the county for several years, worked for the state as a fully qualified veteran service officer. And I had the same concern when I came here. We were beefing up the office at that point, and we made sure we hired a female service officer. This is the third one we've had. There's two before left for various reasons, but we feel like that's important as well. And while you can't just say, this is a job that's open to females, you can certainly, the people who do hiring, it's not me, can be aware that need is there. Yes, sir.
So my question is about the property tax exemption.
Right.
How does that work if the veteran is not married? Would
Well,
that be for
I'm talking about dependent benefits here. So if there's no dependent eligible, there's no eligibility for property tax.
Do you recommend that a Medicaid application be filled out by the loved one's spouse or go to an elder care attorney? As far as...
I'm sorry, I don't have enough knowledge about that to be, as far as I know, it's all, not too many people I know use elder care attorneys for that. So I think it works, but I don't have any recommendation on that. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Roger. I mean, yes, I was going to ask you, when you exit, when you leave and when you go on to your next journey, how can someone define their re-entry, like Omega or into Alpha? I know that's more. I didn't go to school, so.
Okay, so why don't you? I'll be outside after this is over. Let's talk about that. I'm not sure I understand your question, but I'll be glad to discuss that with you.
I just want to know about the eligibility for property tax. My husband has to be, how much percent disability to qualify?
In North Carolina, it has to be total and permanent, 100% total and permanent disability for a veteran to qualify. But once the veteran passes away, then the spouse is eligible if the spouse is eligible for service-connected death benefits. So a veteran might be 30% for heart disease, and he dies of a heart attack. He or she dies of a heart attack. then that is a service-connected death, and then the spouse is eligible for DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation, and is also eligible for property tax exemption at that point.
Well, hello?
Yes, sir. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Is it on? Yeah. Walt, the question has to do with the death certificate. The issue is, you're gone. Who influences the death certificate? Somebody comes there, pronounces you dead, and then, in terms of access to these contributing factors.
Right.
So how does the veteran best get their case informed? Does the spouse tell over there, by the way, this young man had PTSD? How does that get on the death certificate? That's what I'm trying to
say,
find out.
if the death occurs at the VA Medical Center, the doctors there or who are signing the death certificate are aware of that situation. Outside there, that's why I was up here stomping my feet about that. It's dependent on somebody at a very stressful time being aware of the need to get that death certificate straight. And if the spouse needs to know that information, if there's a child who won't take no for an answer, be sure they understand what the needs are and how important that can be for their mother or father if you pass away, and that information, the fact that your service-connected disability contributed to your death in some way is not on that death certificate. It's an important thing to be for your dependents to know about that in advance, because it's not likely to happen. Often that death certificate gets completed quickly and by somebody who may have never even seen you alive.
Well, how do you influence the medical examiner? Because the medical examiner does that, and you don't have contact with
The medical examiner
them.
may not be aware of how those service-connected disabilities contribute to that.
I understand that, but how do you communicate with him to say, oh, by the way, he has Parkinson's from Agent Orange?
Well, now I don't know. In every case, the case I told you about, the example of somebody I was talking to this week whose husband had died in hospice, and she said, I'm filling out forms to be sent to the doctor who's going to do the death certificate. And I said, you need to be sure that information is on that form, and then you need to tell whoever's the hospice person who's helping you that if that doctor doesn't understand, I need to talk to him personally about this before he fills out that death certificate. And death certificates can be modified if that can happen.
But I don't think the lay people know to just have any influence in that. It's usually the doctors or the medical examiners now. How do you communicate?
Put it on the back of the DNR.
Okay,
Right
there's
on
a
the back
suggestion.
of the DNR,
Yeah, okay.
because that's the first thing, if
I'll
you're
put it, on any kind of documents you fill out that are important at the time of your death, have it written on there. Have a copy. Go to VA and get a printout of your service-connected disabilities, and then. But it's not just it's not the fact that you have a service-connected disability. It's the fact that disability caused or contributed to.
Next question right here.
Yes, sir.
On the property tax, is that state, city, and county dependent, or is that universal across
It's
all?
throughout the state. If that form has to be signed by VA. We help you fill it out, send it to VA in Winston-Salem. They sign it, send it back. You take it to the county property tax office, and you get $45,000 off
So
your property tax.
other states, other counties may or may not recognize that?
All counties in North Carolina recognize that. Every state has its own benefits of that.
We have a break point right here, Shannon, if you make it.
On your advanced medical directive, you can actually write it on there of history of, so that your doctors know what you're requesting, and also it's a legal document that's been signed in front of somebody that at that time when you did it, this is what you want on your medical records to show.
As a healthcare provider, I think it should be added as a question on the most form. But until somebody advocates for it to be added to that form, there is a space on that where you can write it.
Yeah, I'm learning things today. But what I know is that it's important. I know because I know how hard it is to get that benefit going without the death certificate showing a service disability as a contributing cause of death.
Thank you, Walt.
Right, thank you.